So such a used to go there.
All right, so it's 10 a.m.
Careful. Can you speak? You can do your thing and.
All right, cool. Testing. Sounds good?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
May the force be with you.
All right, so we have our first team. This is Tech Consulting. We'll have 1 minute set up, and then we'll give you 15 minutes to present. I will give you a 5-minute warning and a 1-minute warning. Okay. For the judges, you'll have 8 minutes for Q&A after that. During that section, only the judges are allowed to make comments or ask questions. Okay. So, are you all ready? All right. Come on.
Good morning, I'm Corley. Good morning, I'm Corley. Good morning, I'm Courtney. Good morning, I'm Corley.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm actually going to start us off with a more personal story. So back in 2013, I actually moved to Panama City, Panama. And one of the first people that I met there was a girl named Patricia. And Patricia shared with me her story of moving from Venezuela to Panama because her family was fleeing the country because of the corruption, the lack of sanitary and basic needs, and the lack of needs in the grocery stores. She feared for her safety and her younger brothers just on the way to school. So when CAT Consulting was presented with this case, we really wanted to capitalize on what we could do to help MaxiNet infiltrate the market and how they can help solve this humanitarian need in Venezuela. So we are CAT Consulting. I'm Cecilia, this is Courtney, Alessandra, and Tran, and we are here to create a business model on how to distribute diapers in Venezuela. So you asked us who the supplier should be, the legal structure and funding, and corporate partners, and finally the brand positioning and pricing strategy. In terms of suppliers, we are going to partner with 7th Generation. So unlike Patricia, a lot of Venezuelans are left in the country. So here we have Maria. Maria is 15 years old and pregnant because of the lack of basic contraceptive methods. She's fearing for her child and whether she's going to have these basic sanitary needs such as diapers when it's born into this world. So that is why 7th Generation is the best opportunity of who you should partner with and supply for the diapers. So 7th Generation, they're all about providing for the next 7 generations ahead. They're focused on being environmentally friendly and also charities and philanthropies. In terms of analysis of alternatives, we only focus on biodegradable diapers because we wanted to align with MaxiNet's commitment to environmental sustainability. So we compared the top contenders, which were Honest, Eco by Natty, and finally 7th Generation. And as you can see, 7th Generation is by far more favorable in cost, biodegradability, alignment, charitability, and finally product mix. So because MaxiNet really cares about the price strategy and the cost, 7th Generation, as you can see, the price of diapers is cheapest in both size 1 and size 5. And additionally, we also looked at alignment, charitability, and finally product mix.
Thank you, Cece, for that great introduction. So today I'm going to talk about the logistics, but mostly at this point in time, Maria has already had her first child. And as the first child is in her arms, she's wondering, where am I going to get these supplies from? Who am I going to buy from? So for the logistics, we found out that there's a distribution center out in Lewisville, Texas. From Lewisville, Texas, we'll do land transportation to the port of Houston, and then from the port of Houston, we will do sea transport to the Puerto de Guaira, which is out next, really close to Caracas, Venezuela. So we chose Caracas, Venezuela because it has the highest population density and also because it has that access to the port. And our expansion plan is to go into Maracaibo, Venezuela, which also has in Puerto de Maracaibo. So we have 2 different ports that we can bring the supplies into. So the way that the supply chain is structured is Lewisville to Houston, Houston to Caracas, and then from Caracas we will give it to our partner supplier in Venezuela. Now we're crawling our way through the market entry. the market entry, we will look at the wholesalers, retailers, and institutions. So we will look at retailers like Farmato, Farmaoro, and Unicasa, which are established pharmaceutical companies and supermarkets, and then eventually, like Maxi Annette wanted to eventually see, is going to institutions. So this is a running hospital that is currently in Venezuela, which is el Hospital Universitario de Caracas, Venezuela.
Thank you, Alessandra. Now I will talk a little bit further about the legal structure and funding. So we wanted to dive deeper into a joint venture. So why a joint venture? Well, Maxi and Net, what you do really well about is you are a distribution channel, and that's something that we want to pry and capitalize on. So that investment with seventh generation, creating that partnership between the two, having that one forefront, capitalizing on opportunities that's already set up with our partner in Venezuela, will be able to have that one cohesive front because seventh generation has that same environmentally friendly eco-sustainability that Maxi and Net strives to have. So why is that so important? We have to dive a little bit deeper with the partners' corporate strategies that we want to look at. First and foremost, we wanted to look at Max Interamerica because Max Interamerica is that parent company. We want to look at Tajin Seasoning because that client already has marketed and looked into the Mexican market. So with them, why are they so relevant? Well, because they already look into nonprofits and have that charitable recognition that Maxi and Net can look into and set as an example for themselves. Next, I want to talk about low cost, high volume, and how that will be a predominant strategy. But why? Because of the volatile market, because of the corruption that's happening. You don't know what's going to happen on the day-to-day, so that low market and high volume will allow us to tackle the competition. What competition, correct? Kimberly & Clark actually had they left in 2014, which creates that opportunity for Maxi Net and seventh generation to look into. P&G is actually also pulling out. This sets up that opportunity for our joint venture to dominate and infiltrate the market. How are we going to be different? Well, seventh generation actually has that, like I talked about, that seamless front with Maxi and Net. That's important because we want to have Maxi and Net emphasize their market infiltration with infiltrating markets by being different in regard to their environmentally sustainability and that forefront that they're going to set up between the two companies and having that joint venture between the two. So next we're going to talk about consumer profile.
So as Maria's child is starting to crawl and starting to take its first few steps, we're going to take our first few steps into the consumer profile. So our first city that we're going to go into is Caracas, Venezuela, with a population of roughly 2.9 million people, including the metropolitan area around it. The second city that we are interested in is Maracaibo, Venezuela. And as you can see on this graph, it has roughly 2 million residents, including the metropolitan area. The consumer profile. So our consumer profile, we focus mainly on the diapers, which will be purchased in the first 5 years. So most women bear their first child at the median age of 21.7 years old. So we're going to be targeting them. Obviously mothers, also quality, because the quality of the healthcare in Venezuela is very poor, so we want to provide a quality diaper that is free of chlorine and free of fragrances that seventh generation offers. And finally, the low cost, because the GDP per capita in Venezuela right now is $12,500 US. And that also aligns with Maxi and Net's low cost strategy. So the product mix. In the first 5 years, we are going to be introducing the biodegradable diapers. And then we're going to expand to the feminine products. So we didn't want to do the adult diapers like you guys had brought up because the median age is so low. So the median age being 28 years old, these are going to be the main two markets where we can really capitalize on. Pricing strategy. This graph right here from Statista really shows the volatility of the Bolivar in Venezuela and how it is changing every day. So because of this, we are going to keep up with the current rate of the market. So these are the current rates currently in bolivars in Venezuela.
Thank you, Cece. So as we walk our way through Maria's child, we can see that she is going to stumble upon a few steps. With our implementation plan, as we mentioned before, we start with a joint venture with Maxi and Net and Seventh Generation, which will ship to our partner in Venezuela. But with that, we also have to consider any obstacles that will come in our way when entering the Venezuelan market. So we decided to focus on two aspects, which is the inflation, the hyperinflation, and the government corruption that's there, and we have provided solutions as well for you. As for the implementation schedule, it kind of flows with what we have been talking about, and then by the sixth stage, we advise that MaxiaNet goes into more Latin American markets, as you guys have wanted to propose to help Seventh Generation become one of the top providers in other countries as well. For our marketing strategy, we're going to work our way into the corporate partners by providing a private screening of what is going on in Venezuela. Really try to get that emotional appeal with trying to figure out what we need to do. And then doing a marketing campaign at a low cost for the MaxiaNet, which will be sent out into the corporate partners and their employees.
So now as, excuse me, as Maria's child is school age, she's learning how to read, write, and her numbers. So that's gonna bring us into our budget. So with any new business plan, you wanna look at your expected costs and your hope for revenue stream. And as you can see here, the cost to MaxiaNet for this joint venture will be purchasing the diapers from Seventh Generation and also providing that transportation from the United States to Venezuela. We also included an advertising cost of $5,000 for the first 2 years, as Alessandra mentioned, for our marketing strategy. After that, we hope to have an established brand. For the projected revenue, so as we talked about with the hyperinflation and the low GDP, it's going to be really difficult to make a high profit. And so because of that, we wanted to make up for the losses with income from the donors and fundraising that we have previously mentioned. And so this brings us into our net income and our net losses. And so we're projected to break even between years 7 and 8, but this isn't going to come from revenue streams alone from the diapers. This is going to come from the donations that we are going to bring in, and they are projected to grow by 15% each year because we're going to establish the brand loyalty and the partnerships. And we also have a caveat that the prices and transportation costs are subject to change, as well as the revenue streams, because of the extreme hyperinflation in Venezuela. So what's next? So we established that we want to bring our diapers into Caracas, and eventually our feminine hygiene products into Caracas as well. And then eventually, in the end, we want to have a full implementation of our total product mix, which would be the diapers and the feminine hygiene products in Maracaibo. So what's in it for you is picking TAC Consulting solution to the market infiltration in Venezuela. You obviously are going to gain market leadership as Kimberly Clark and P&G are leaving. There's a great opportunity for the market, as well as Seventh Generation aligning with MaxiaNet's values. And as we mentioned in stage 6, the growth that will be able to come from going into other Latin American countries. And finally, that large humanitarian influence with helping and solving the needs that people like Maria are experiencing.
Thank you, Courtney. So as we now finally reach the last stage of Maria's progression in her society, being a grown woman, we want to bring it home. So why? Why TAC Consulting? Well, MaxiaNet prides itself on taking risks, prides itself on their multi-channel, their distribution channel, sustainability. This is something that we've already established as TAC Consulting that you can find with Seventh Generation. However, what's going to differentiate you is not just your bottom line, but beyond that, your humanitarian value, what you're going to leave behind for generations to come, just like Seventh Generation itself. We talked about logistics, whether it be the joint venture, low cost, high volume. At the end of the day, you take risks. MaxiaNet prides itself on taking risks, and we hope today we left you with that one story of Maria, that you take a risk on TAC Consulting and see how TAC Consulting can provide that solution for you. So take a risk on TAC Consulting. We hope to answer some of the questions at the following end of our discussion today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. So judges, you now have 8 minutes for Q&A and feedback.
Wonderful. I was hoping, thank you very much. That was a wonderful presentation. I just had a quick question as far as how you guys went about selecting Seventh Generation. as a biodegradable option versus perhaps a non-biodegradable option. How did you guys approach that as far as a pricing perspective? Could you give me a little more detail on why you decided to go maybe for the biodegradable brand instead of maybe a recycling program in Venezuela? What was the thought process behind selecting that brand?
Yeah, that's a great question.
First and foremost, we want to make sure the decision of biodegradable was our main priority. Maxi and Nat already want to strive to keep waste low and not have that mistake of, like, most people already used the other options with diapers, so we wanted to maximize and capitalize on that opportunity because there's already so many other issues, like health issues within Venezuela because of that. But if somebody wants to.
Yeah, also because we did a little research on MaxiNet and we noticed that MaxiNet is very aligned with helping the environment, and so we wanted to keep that alignment and introduce a product that's going to be biodegradable and not contribute to the waste problem like in the world in general, but also in Venezuela.
And on a cost standpoint, they were relatively, I mean, biodegradable wasn't, you know, way out of range compared to a regular diaper. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So how did you come up with seventh generation be a low in cost or favorable cost when you're shipping all the way from the United States? There's tariffs, there's taxes. And a second part of that, what's the distance between Caracas and Maracaibo? Because then it adds more distribution costs.
Yeah, so as far as the low cost, the cost that we took into consideration was just purchasing the diaper from each person. So the cost that you see on the graph here is how much it would cost Maxi and Nat to purchase per diaper from the supplier.
In addition to that, we're expecting that since we are doing a joint venture with Seventh Generation, we are going to have a lower wholesale price because it's not, they also, Seventh Generation really emphasizes that they want to help others in need as well because they have also done charitable work. So I think when Maxi and Nat presents these issues, the humanitarian issues that are happening in Venezuela, Seventh Generation will really empathize with that.
And for the second part of your question, for the distribution between the distances, we just added the extra cost for distributing from Caracas into the, I mean, we have the balance sheet, yeah, so we have all the costs and we added them after the 6th year.
Yeah,
When
and in addition to that, we also chose, we're not going to transport from Caracas to Maracaibo. We're going to use both of the ports because it's right out, it's like really close to the city.
So I noticed seventh generation cost, you have here on the slide, it goes from 30 cents to 40 cents. Is that per diaper?
Per diaper.
And then later on, you did present a number which was $2. So I'm curious if you put thought into the package size and, you know, what is that go-to market strategy? Are you aiming to sell diapers per unit or within the actual package size that seventh generation?
Yeah, so we're gonna use the standard 36 diapers in the package, but breaking it down into cost, we, for like the income statement purposes and all of that. And so this is how much it goes for in US dollars in Venezuela.
Okay, so this would be the 36 pack. Okay.
It's also very beneficial for the parents as well to just buy it in this 36 pack bulk instead of what was presented, which was only a 9 pack for 10,000 bolivars. So we're trying to also make it very economical for the moms and their families.
And how this will be feasible is going to be after we do all the fundraising. So that's how we are going to be able to afford to sell it at such a low rate at the current market rate in Venezuela.
Okay, and do you feel like a consumer would be able to buy a 36 pack of diapers versus a smaller pack that perhaps, you know, they don't have the money to spend on such a large package size?
So I think that's where our product differentiation comes in with the quality. It's biodegradable. I mean, it's a little relatively more expensive, obviously, to buy it in a 36 pack, but we're hoping with our different, like how we differentiate ourselves, they'll be able to see that
Okay.
We also wanted to be, sorry.
No, you're good, you're good.
We also wanted to be very modest with how we were pricing it because, like Courtney talked about with the donors and the fundraisers, we wanted to be really modest in that regard. And so, we priced it, I don't know why else. Yeah, essentially, I guess reiterating what you were saying, making sure that we were pricing it correctly within the market was definitely a challenge for us, but we also saw the emphasis of the basically time, like, I don't know what I'm using. Sorry.
You're okay.
I guess just reiterating what Courtney said,
Okay.
that was definitely our key strategy to differentiate ourselves, for sure.
Okay.
I have one more. So how would you get, you mentioned Unilever a little bit in there, and then there's also seventh generation. Does Unilever make the products?
Yes, Unilever is the owns 7th generation,
Okay,
yeah. It's
so
a brand.
there seems to be a lot of different entities that it's hard for to get you a favorable cost, and for companies like that to only break even after 7 and 8 years would be a pretty big concern. How did you come up with the years and the ROI?
Well, so, I mean, if you wanna bring up the income statement, basically our revenue stream is coming mostly from the donors and the fundraising. It's gonna be pretty unreasonable that we ourselves are bringing in the revenue, which is why we emphasized a lot on the fundraising and the humanitarian cause behind it, yeah.
Okay.
I have a sort of maybe three-part question. So the first part is brand positioning in Venezuela. So how does that 7th generation brand compete with existing brands in the market? And I was also curious if you had put any thought into identifying an import partner or a distributor partner in Venezuela, as well as potential donor partners in the United States or other countries that you've identified.
1 minute left.
So for the brand positioning, we did it based off quality and, like, if it's like, a high cost. So high cost in terms of how much you're getting for. So although 7th generation is going to be a high cost for the Venezuelans, they are getting more in the package and also a better quality for the child. We did a little bit more research on how the diapers work for 7th generation, and the child like is most likely to be more comfortable. And since it has so many like chemical-free, paraben-free, like we know we can also help the children that don't have that medical provider to tell them that if they are allergic to it, instead of buying random diapers as well.
I want to also touch upon your last one.
That's time.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Tech Consulting.
Thank
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.